FBI agents Peter Strzok and Lisa Page between February and September of 2016. A lot of them are interesting. Here's a key text. The agents did exactly what you would hope agents would never do. They expressed concern about whether Hillary Clinton, if she was elected president, would take revenge against the FBI for the crime of investigating her. In exchange, from February of 2016, Agent Page told Agent Strzok, quote, "One more thing. She might be our next president. The last thing you need, us going in there loaded for bear. You think she's going to remember or care that it was more DOJ than the FBI?" Strzok told Page that he agreed. In other words, political concerns were at top of mind as they investigated this politician, Hillary Clinton. Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina chairs the Oversight Committee in the House. He's a member of the Intelligence Committee, and he joins us to react. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Sir.
Are we reading too deeply into the exchange we just put on the screen, do you think?
Well, I don't think so, because you read that one in isolation. If you read all the text, it's clear that they did not want her charged. They wanted her to be the president of the United States. They really didn't want Donald Trump to be the president of the United States, and they concede throughout these texts that they did things differently in this investigation from any other investigation that they were part of.
So what I don't understand is, even if you're watching this at home and you think, well, I wanted Hillary to win too, and I don't like Donald Trump too, shouldn't you be a little concerned, maybe actually terrified, that FBI agents conducting a criminal investigation into a politician were worried about the political elements of the investigation? That's not supposed to happen, is it?
Well, you may remember, as I do, Jim Comey telling us that the FBI doesn't give a whit about politics. He loved to tell us how apolitical the Bureau was. And here we have these texts. Of course, our friends on the left say, well, these are texts between two lovers. Yeah, that's right. You're much more likely to tell the truth when you don't think anybody else is watching. This, I think, is the unvarnished truth of how they viewed both her, him, and the investigation, and how they wanted it to turn out. Keep in mind, Tucker, all of this is done before she was ever interviewed. So the fix was in, unfortunately, before they even interviewed the target of the investigation.
What does it tell you about what they thought of Hillary Clinton? They believed if she became president, she would punish our chief law enforcement agency for investigating her. What does that say about their view of her or their understanding of her?
It's either that, or I think another reasonable construction could be that she would reward the DOJ, thinking it was more DOJ lawyers that concluded she should not be charged as opposed to the FBI. And that's actually how I read it, that she would give more credit to the Department of Justice. You know, keep in mind, reading these texts, it doesn't appear that anyone wanted her charged before they even knew what she was going to say. I read that to be, they were concerned DOJ would get the credit for taking care of her more than the Bureau would.
You've taken an enormous amount of abuse, as have your colleagues on the Intelligence Committee, as has this channel, for daring to report this news as if asking questions about the behavior of law enforcement officials is unpatriotic. How do you respond to that?
Tucker, there's no one in Congress that has more respect for law enforcement. I spent 18 years working with them, and it's the best 18 years of my professional life, and always will be. I love law enforcement, which is why these texts break my heart. Bias is insidious. Bias is the one thing in a courtroom, Tucker, the judge will give you the broadest leeway, because it infects and instructs every decision you make when you are biased for or against someone.
Right.
So when I see manifest bias, you know, think back to other important cases in our country's history. I mean, Mark Furman got in trouble not so much for working the crime scene, but because of racial epithets that he had uttered earlier in his career.
That's right.
That's how seriously we take bias. I don't know why the left can't concede in this case that these two agents should never have been part of investigating her case.
Well, you would think that Democrats, at some point, it would occur to them that maybe most FBI agents aren't liberal. They're probably conservative. I'd be willing to bet money on that. So if you allow the FBI, Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email.
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not. You know what? You're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails. They hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the. You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television because
you know what?
This
That's
is perfect.
Just so
this is
beneath your office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it. Look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words. That guy's a liar and a demagogue, in case you didn't notice. Bill McGurn is a columnist at the Wall Street Journal. He just wrote a piece asking why Congressman Schiff seems so uninterested in whether the infamous Trump dossier is true. Are the facts in there? Are they right? Mr. McGurn joins us tonight. Bill, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tucker.
So, obviously, I'm annoyed by Adam Schiff because in the face of a sincere question, he accused me of being a Kremlin agent and, in effect, unpatriotic. You have, I think, a little emotional distance from this. Tell us your concerns about his behavior as a member of the Intel Committee.
Well, at a basic level, the Intelligence Committee is an oversight committee, right? And oversight committees are charged with getting information, keeping tabs on the government. This man just seems determined not to get information, and certainly not to get it to the American people. You know, when the Republicans put together their memo outlining some of the information they found from the FISA application and so forth. You know, he was asked on CNN, shouldn't the American people see this? And he opted for the Nathan Jessup response in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. I mean, he doesn't trust the American people. I think, you know, the bias should be toward disclosure. I think there are legitimate things that should not be disclosed. But, you know, we make unclassified summaries of classified information all the time. And remember, he fought the subpoenas of justice. He fought the subpoenas for the FBI. He fought the subpoena for Fusion that eventually led to the news that the Hillary campaign had funded the Steele dossier.
So you're old enough, and I am too, to remember a very different time where the sides were kind of inverted, and it was Democrats, Frank Church of Idaho, for example, who were arguing that the public has a right to know at least a broad outline of what the intel agencies are doing, what law enforcement is doing. It's our government. It's our country. We have a right to know. Democrats used to say that all the time. I agreed with them. When did they stop saying that, and why?
I don't know. I mean, look, to me, there are two big issues. I want to know whether people on the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to affect the election, right? That's something I want to know. I also want to know if people at Justice and the FBI, our two premier law enforcement agencies, put their fingers on the scales for political reasons. Remember, both candidates were under investigation of some sort by the FBI. It's extraordinary. And the most important thing is not prosecutions, it's finding out the truth. And we have a whole lot of people. I mean, when this memo was produced and it came out, you know, it had the hashtag release the memo. You know, Congressman Schiff came out and was blaming it on Russian bots. Well, you can look at it the other way. What does it tell you when Russian bots are more for disclosure than a congressman on the House Intel Committee?
We've invited him many times, including yesterday, to come on and explain that. Explain how he found himself basically practicing McCarthyism.
Yeah, and he's always on the TV shows saying he found more than circumstantial evidence that Donald Trump had colluded, but we haven't seen any of the evidence. It sounds like OJ's promises to find the real killer, you know?
Well, he won't come on this show. He hasn't been since December 7th. We're keeping track of last year. So anyway, Bill McGurn, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
Appreciate it. Well, the White House released an immigration plan just tonight. Its detractors immediately called it, quote, a white supremacy ransom note. That was from the leading DACA group. Leader of one left-wing group that supports amnesty but opposes the president's proposal joins us next. Also, a new picture emerging tonight. It could have changed the 2008 election, but nobody was allowed to see it. For real. For the first time, you will see it, and you will meet the man who took it and who's been holding it all these years. That's ahead. The White House released an immigration proposal tonight. It would trade amnesty for about 2 million people who came to this country illegally in exchange for new border security measures, changes to chain migration, and an end to the diversity visa lottery. Well, the plan still lacks details on what they mean by border security or how much it would reduce chain migration. It was immediately attacked by almost everyone, especially by the left. They claimed it was, quote, a white supremacist ransom letter. That, according to, I think, the largest DACA group. Over at the New York Times, reporters Cheryl Gay Stolberg and Michael Shear piled on. They noted that, quote, some described it as nothing but a heartless attempt to rid the country of immigrants and slam shut the nation's borders. That was in a news story, by the way, just so you know. Well, whether the White House passes this or not, gets it through the Congress, tech overlords like Mark Zuckerberg, one of the richest men in the world, are pushing hard for amnesty for people here illegally. The Facebook CEO made a post on his website yesterday. He urged everybody to call members of Congress and demand a deal on DACA and protect the recipients from being deported. Quote, dreamers are members of our community, Zuckerberg said, and there are 800,000 living in fear with no ability to plan for the future. Todd Schulte is president of Forward.us. It's a Zuckerberg-funded group that promotes citizenship for a lot of people here illegally. Todd, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So the response is kind of amazing. So the White House comes out and says we're willing to accept 2 million, probably a little more than 2 million amnesties for people who are here illegally. That's more than the Dreamer population we've been talking about. Here was the response they got. United We Dream, the Dreamer advocacy group, it's a white nationalist ransom note. ACLU, according to a Bloomberg report, called it, quote, a nativist screed to benefit white supremacists. How is it that a plan to let in 2 million almost exclusively non-white immigrants is a feature of white supremacy? That seems insane to me.
Well, I think it's really important. Let's actually talk about what we know what's in the plan. And we don't know everything.
But can you just respond to my point? So these are the groups that said they wanted amnesty for the Dreamers. They just got it. The White House said, okay, we'll give it to you. And they're calling it white supremacy.
Well, I think actually it's a whole package of immigration reform, and you laid this out. I think the salient fact, actually, that people are really responding to is this is a 50% cut to legal immigration. And my question is,
by the way, I think I'm more familiar with the numbers. Hold on. I don't think that's right. So
I'm happy to explain why that's the case. Yeah. So by cutting 5 of 7 of the family-based immigration categories and cutting the diversity visa, that's a 50% cut to legal immigration. That's the biggest cut to legal immigration.
Now you don't know what you're talking about, or you're misleading on purpose. The diverse under this proposal, which I just read and talked to the guy who wrote it.
Okay.
Yes, it ends the diversity lottery, but it reallocates those green cards to people who are in the backlog of people applying to come here.
Yeah, that's where he tricked you, and let me tell you why. I'm glad this came up. So it reallocates 50,000 visas a year of the cut. For the family-based immigration cuts, it permanently ends those categories. So for year 1 or 2, there's a little bit of a reallocation.
That's not true. Okay, look, wait, there's no net loss. But look, we're getting into the weeds on a plan.
Where do you think the visas go?
Hold on.
Then?
They are all reallocated to the massive backlog of people waiting to get here legally. But you're kind of missing the point and dodging my question.
I think that is the point. But
no,
go ahead.
The point is, this is a plan that gives amnesty to more people than we thought the DACA representatives were asking for, and they're calling it white supremacy. Do you think that's a fair criticism? Is this a feature of white supremacy?
No, and I think we should talk about the policy here, and I don't want to respond to other people's words, but this is a path forward by the White House. And look, I think what they acknowledge is what 87% of Americans believe, which is Dreamers should be protected by Congress. They should be able to earn citizenship.
Right.
And the DACA population is about 800,000 people.
That's what it gave, isn't it? Or that's what they're saying they're willing to do.
But this is the point. And you talked about this. You call it chain migration. People call it the family-based immigration system. I don't understand why, if you and I agree that Dreamers should be able to sit here and they should be able to stay, why should Dreamers only be able to be protected from deportation if we cut legal immigration by 50%?
Okay. So actually, you're wrong. Most Americans don't believe that you ought to let the people who just got amnesty bring all the relatives in. In fact, there was just a Harvard-Harris poll you just saw a couple days ago that showed overwhelmingly people are against that. You know who's really against that? African-American voters.
Yeah, do you have a poll that shows African-American
I have it right here. And I'm quoting from it. 85% no, against chain migration. 85% of black voters think immigration policy ought to be based on merit, not on having relatives in the U.S.
Well, can I
85%.
Yeah, so I think it's important to talk about when we say merit, what do we mean? This bill doesn't add anything to the merit-based side. It just cuts from the family-based side.
You're dodging my question again.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Yes, you are. You're upset because this would cut
Tucker.
chain migration. Hold on.
Okay.
You just said Americans support keeping it. And I'm showing you poll numbers that show, no, they don't, actually.
I actually didn't. What I asked you was,
you acknowledge that most Americans are not in favor of chain migration.
Why are you better off if we let dreamers stay, I think you and I agree, dreamers should be able to earn citizenship. Why does that have to come with a 50% cut to legal immigration? That doesn't help me. That doesn't help middle-class Americans. That doesn't.
Well, actually, we can debate that. You don't have any numbers that show that the current system helps them, because it doesn't. But you're missing the point, which is Americans don't want a system that lets people in purely because they're related to someone who lives here already. That's called chain migration. They don't want that. They overwhelmingly don't want that, but you and your tech overlords are pushing it. And my point is, won't you just acknowledge that the public doesn't want it? That's all I'm saying.
Well, no, I don't think that's what the public wants.
Really? 85% of black voters say they don't want it. The majority of Hispanic voters as well. 81% of all voters don't want it.
So the ads that run between commercials, when they, the one that they show an immigrant comes in and they do this and that, and all of a sudden.
I don't see the ads.
Okay,
but.
well, they're paying, they're good. They're very misleading, though. We should be really clear. You talked about dreamers who go through this process. Policy shows.
You're not going to acknowledge this poll, are you? I've read
the poll.
So
that's not what the poll says.
You think the majority of Americans support chain migration? What poll are you referring to? I'm talking the one that was just taken. I
don't think the majority of Americans. You can throw poll-tested terms all you want at them, Tucker. That's how politics work.
How about this one? 85% of African American voters, I'm quoting, think immigration policy should be based on merit, not based on having relatives in the U.S. That's the definition, both colloquial and technical, of chain migration.
So let me ask you a question. Are you suggesting we should shift to a more skills-based or cut? Because all that the White House has put on now is cuts to legal immigration.
I think we should only let people in who benefit America, and we should do it on a case-by-case basis. That's my view.
So just so we're clear, when you say that, the government should be in the business of approving every immigrant one by one.
100%. Are you joking? It's our country, of course, in the way that Harvard, where your boss went, screens its applicants. That's my view, but.
Well, that seems like a conservative approach to tell businesses.
Not conservative.
The Department of Labor's got to
stamp a higher. I don't care what businesses think. I live here, and so do my kids. I want the best people to come. That's it.
Me too. I think we can agree on that.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Tucker.
Last week, we welcomed Chicago Alderman George Cardenas onto the program to discuss whether Chicago really ought to be a sanctuary city when it has, to put it mildly, a few other issues. We had a spirited exchange. Do you think that you have an obligation to represent American citizens first, above people who are here illegally?
I represent my citizens very well, thank you, Tucker. Everyone that comes through that door.
Okay, so you weren't willing to answer that
loves the service.
So let's try a second one.
What? So they have to be blue-eyed and blonde to be able to say, okay, you're American.
I mean, what a loathsome little demagogue you are to say something like that.
No, I'm saying, how do you want me to ask?
Little demagogue you are. So I lost my temper, but he pushed me. Nicholas Pizzato is also an alderman in the city of Chicago. He is not for the city's efforts to protect illegal immigrants from American law, and he joins us tonight. Thank you a lot, very much for coming on tonight. So I didn't mean to get into such a bitter debate with your colleague, but I was asking a pretty simple question, which is, how does it help the citizens, the American citizens in Chicago, to do this? And he called me a bigot in response. So let me just ask you the same question. Does it help Chicagoans, these immigration policies?
Well, of course not, Tucker. It doesn't help one bit, so.
So then what's the point of it? Because I thought the point of representing a constituency, holding elective office, was to look out for the people who voted for you, the citizens, the voters.
Well, that's the way I feel. I mean, we represent the people that live in our community, live in our city, and the people that are here. I believe, you have to be here legally, and I certainly don't believe in sanctuary city, so.
It just, and I love Chicago, and everyone who visits it does. Great people, great food, beautiful city. But, like all cities, it has some actual problems, financial problems, crime problems. It does, you can't convince me that all the political energy spent on catering to people who shouldn't be here, that's got to detract from, making the city better for everyone else.
Well, right. I mean, I wish we have a serious mental health issue in the city. We have a serious crime problem, and I wish we would be concentrating on those type of things as opposed to illegals in our city.
So why your mayor's all in, a bunch of aldermen are all in? Why is that? What's the motive?
I couldn't explain what their motive is. I mean, basically, it's the mayor and 48 aldermen support Sanctuary City. There's basically 2 of us that do not support Sanctuary City.
But meanwhile, the mayor and all those aldermen have let the south side of your city become, uninhabitable, and people get killed every day. What do the people who live on the south side of your city in poverty, amidst all that violence, what do they think about this? I bet they don't like it.
Well, you'd have to ask. You'd have to get one of my colleagues from the South Side on, or the West Side one day, Tucker. But I'm not sure how they feel about it. I know it really bothers me, and I think our money could be a little bit better spent. And if we stick with our sanctuary city policies, we could be losing $1 billion of federal funds. So I'm very concerned about that.
And you can't afford it, Mr. Altman. Thanks a lot for coming on. And thanks for what you do for your great city.
Thanks, Tucker.
Well, more than 1,000 private jets have landed in Davos, Switzerland to discuss how they can make you pay for global warming. Irony alert in the background. Mark Stein is here to assess it. As we speak, you weren't invited. President Trump's Air Force One is one of the biggest planes there, but more than 1,000 private jets have also showed up for the event, spewing vast amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. Despite this, global warming is, of course, a big topic in Davos, as it always is when rich people gather. Many attendees, including Al Gore, are claiming we need drastic worldwide action to save the planet. They want to ban cars, commercial air travel, meat, all to offset their private jet use. Mark Stein has been watching carefully. He's an author and columnist and a friend of the show. He joins us now to assess. So I kind of like how this works. I fly in my private plane. You have to stop eating hamburgers and walk, and that kind of balances out.
Yes, that's right. This is the way these guys plan, that somehow they will still get to jet around, like Al Gore in his private plane going to world conferences, Leonardo DiCaprio, and you will be beating your laundry down on the rocks with the village women, getting your clothes dry because the washer and the dryer are destroying the planet. And the fact that they all meet in a remote luxury Swiss ski resort. You said that your viewers weren't invited, Tucker. And that's right, most people aren't invited because it's government leaders and what they call so-called stakeholders. And apparently 90% of the schlubs on this planet don't have a stake in anything. But Kate Blanchett, who's getting an award for raising awareness of refugees, she apparently counts as a stakeholder. Incidentally, they should have given the award for raising awareness of refugees to the mayor of Östersund in Sweden, who told the women of Östersund that they now had so many refugees it wasn't safe for the ladies to go out at night. That's who I'd have given the. I don't think we need Kate Blanchett to raise awareness of refugees. And that's
their problem. So you have at Davos right now the leaders of the world's largest democracies, the economic leaders, the political leaders. How many of them do you think personally believe in democracy for real?
I don't think they do, and I think that's what's fascinating about this. They regard things like the Trump election and Brexit and the rise of, say, Marine Le Pen in France and the AfD in Germany. They regard these things as aberrations and as proof that democracy has to be moderated by all the sensible, clever people getting together in a Swiss ski resort, kind of like the Blofeld doing the Spectre round table in at the top of the mountain in the. Yeah, in the Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service, if you're keeping in touch with your world conspiracies. They all meet on the top of a mountain like the Spectre board meeting in James Bond films, and they decide the measures they can take to ameliorate and moderate the voice of the people, because the voice of the people is vulgar and keeps voting for Trump and Brexit and that kind of thing.
But don't you think if you're going to have a global conspiracy of elites, at least the people involved should be impressive and self-aware? Smart?
Yes, I think so. And I think it's become a rather sort of third-rate pseudo-celebrity event. As you say, this idea that they're all the people with private jets, it's a kind of class thing. So there's a lot of layabout Saudi princes who fly in there. There's a lot of rather trashy celebrities. There's a lot of powerful business leaders. But at heart, it is an anti-democratic bias. You mentioned that hamburgers cause global warming. That was this story today. I didn't actually believe that, but it turns out that if you eat a breakfast sandwich from McDonald's, every time you eat a sausage and egg McMuffin, a polar bear loses its ice flow. Apparently, the sandwiches are responsible for global warming. So as bad as it is, Leonardo DiCaprio and Al Gore flying around to these summits on their private jets, if they all flew into Davos on a sausage and egg McMuffin, the entire planet would be kaput, because that's apparently what causes global warming, according to these guys.
Okay, next January, you and I are going. Let's do a show from there. That would be so fun.
Yeah, and we will go in on your personal Tucker Carlson Tonight show, official sausage and egg McMuffin magic flying plane.
As they say, next year in Davos. Mark, thank you.
That's right. Thanks,
Good to
Tucker.
see you. Could a secret photo of Barack Obama have changed the 2008 election? It's a real question. We have the photo. It just came out. And for the first time, we're talking to the person who took that photo. We'll tell you why you've never seen it before. Next. A photo of Barack Obama with the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan was not released until now because some believed it would have, quote, made a difference to the former president's political career. Askia Muhammad took that picture, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Muhammad, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So we just showed on the screen the photograph of former President Barack Obama before he was president with Louis Farrakhan. You took that picture. Where was it?
It was in the Congressional Black Caucus meeting room. Actually, I was looking at the picture, and if you look very, very closely, you can see on some of the people, they have a sticker that says HC9, which is one of those caucus rooms in the basement of the Capitol where meetings are held, and that's where it was taking place.
So why have we never seen this picture before?
Well, a couple of things. I was sort of honor bound. Immediately, the day of the picture that was taken, I was on Capitol Hill. I worked out of the Senate Radio TV Gallery at the time. A staff member from the Black Caucus called me and said, "We have to have the picture back." And I was kind of taken aback, and it's like, you know, so we talked a couple of times on the phone after that, and I said, okay, well, I'll give the picture to Minister Farrakhan's chief of staff, who is Leonard Farrakhan Muhammad. He's shown on the far left of the picture. And I gave the original disc to him and, in a sense, swore myself to secrecy because I had quietly made a copy for myself. Just, it's my picture, it's my art, it's my intellectual property.
Right.
And I wanted it, I owned it, and I wanted to keep it. And so it wasn't my place to.
But why would people from the Congressional Black Caucus or the Nation of Islam headquarters in Chicago not want that picture to come out?
Well, I don't think it was so much the Nation of Islam, but rather the Black Caucus. Perhaps they sensed the future. This was 2005 now. There were no, he had just been in the office a few months. But the idea, and in fact, he had people from the Nation of Islam working on his staff in his office in Chicago, his Senate staff. The members of the Nation of Islam helped him in his Senate campaign on the south side of Chicago. So. But I think as people considered the ambitions, the thought was Minister Farrakhan and his reputation would hurt someone trying to win acceptance in the broad cross-section.
Did he have contact with anyone from the Nation of Islam as a senator or as president that you know of?
Not that I know of. He did have, as I recall, there was a member of the Nation of Islam in Chicago worked on his staff, on his office in Chicago, his constituent services office in Chicago. But I never knew her. I never knew her name. But at some point in his, at some point she was no longer on his staff. I don't think it was an acrimonious departure, but she just wasn't on his staff anymore.
So was Louis Farrakhan or members of the Nation of Islam, were they offended that President Obama wanted to distance himself from them?
Some were. Many were. Many were angry. Many were hurt that not only did Senator Obama denounce Minister Farrakhan, he rejected him. In the same interview appearing, I've forgotten what it was, with Senator Clinton.
Yes.
And she went after him about, well, I rejected the support of some people that she considered unacceptable in New York when she was running for Senate, and really demanded that he do the same. And so he said, okay, if it'll satisfy you, I'll reject him too. And so people in the nation have a sensitivity about this and feel that we've often been made, Minister Farrakhan has certainly been a litmus test for people, whether it was fair or not, because people who want that acceptability in the crossover, you might say, can't stand the inquisition that comes with being associated with Minister Farrakhan.
Well, I wish it had come out earlier, because I think it makes for an interesting conversation wherever you fall along the spectrum. Thank you for coming on tonight, Mr. Muhammad.
Thanks for having me on.
That picture and telling us what it's about. Time for final exam. Can you beat two professional news hosts when it comes to knowledge of this week's news? Stay tuned. Which of two Fox News professionals has been paying more attention at work, and who's been playing video games? Our defending champion this week, Carly Shimkus, a reporter for Fox News Headlines 24/7. She's being challenged by Fox correspondent Peter Doocy, a veteran of that scene, with mixed results. But we're glad to have both of you back.
Yes. If I lose, don't tell my bosses that I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, and playing video games.
They may find out. Okay, you know the rules. I'm going to tell you anyway. Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. The first one to buzz in gets to answer. You have to finish. You have to wait until I finish asking the question in order to buzz in. Each correct answer is worth a point. A wrong answer subtracts a point from your total. Best of 5 wins. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, great. Question 1. A world leader stripped down to his trunks to take a refreshing and religious ice bath. Which leader was it? Peter Doocy.
It was President Putin.
Vladimir Putin?
Yes.
How dare you use those words? Let's see if you're right. Roll tape.
Vladimir Putin has taken his shirt off again. Why did you do this, Mr. Vlad?
President Putin made his way to the lake in a fur coat and fur boots, and then he stripped down to his bathing trunks.
Peter Doocy, clearly a Russian agent. You knew it was Vladimir Putin. Did you know that too? You probably did.
I did, and I know that Abby Huntsman's father, Ambassador Huntsman, Ambassador to Russia, also did that as well. So half-point situation.
No.
Again,
unfortunately, you know, I'd love to, but the judges are saying no. We're going to have to stick to the rules.
Darn it!
Despite
He's got some
our desire.
reflexes
I know
on him.
he does. He's fast.
Oh,
I've been practicing.
Former arm wrestling champ. Question 2.
The Nintendo thing once again. Okay.
A cable news host, we know that world well, just released a folk rock ballad he says was inspired by the Women's March. Which cable news host was it? Oh, Peter Doocy.
It was Morning Joe Scarborough.
Are you sure?
I've never seen the show. Not my pick.
I think it's Brian Kilmeade for the record, but whatever. We're going to find out on the tape.
It's like when your boss comes in wearing an ugly shirt. You don't want to be the one telling him it sucks. A better example, when you're one of your most pompous talents, Joe Scarborough thinks he's a pop star.
You may get the chance to stand against a column of tanks.
What this president is doing is just so wrong.
Holding up your hand.
He's like 10 times worse than Nickelback.
Oh, I didn't know they made the song like a thing on the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you know that Al Sharpton also cut an album years ago with James Brown? Little known fact. I have it. Yeah, it's not bad.
Ah.
You got that right, Peter Doocy.
Thank you.
All
It
right.
was not Kilmeade. Question 3.
Gotta dig myself out.
Researchers in China just announced a terrifying scientific breakthrough, not surprisingly. They say they've successfully cloned which animal? Carly.
A monkey.
A monkey. I actually don't know the answer, so we're going to roll tape and find out if it's a monkey.
And Game of Clones. A major breakthrough as Chinese scientists clone monkeys for the first time ever, inching one step closer to human cloning.
As a big Curious George fan, I'm very disappointed.
And can we point out, those are 2 of the cutest monkeys we've ever seen.
No, that's not going to end well. The Chinese clone monkeys. 30 years from now, this will be seen as a turning point.
Maybe. Well, yeah.
In the history of the species. Question 4. Prior to last Sunday's big football game, police in Philadelphia used which food product on telephone poles to keep Wild Eagles fans from climbing them? Carly.
Crisco.
That's disgusting. I don't believe you.
Oh, let's go to the tape.
There you go.
The cops in Philly actually greased the poles with Crisco to try to keep people from climbing them after the game. That is a real thing that happened. It didn't really work.
Safety.
The Crisco cops, as they call them.
Crisco cops.
That's really, and then it rains, and then there's just Crisco all over the sidewalk in Philly.
It's delicious and effective.
Yeah,
Not low-cal, though.
That's right.
Okay, so we're in a weird place, so we rarely find ourselves here. We're in sudden death. So each of you has 2 points.
Cage match? No.
Could be.
Okay, sorry.
This is the last question. Are you both ready?
Yes.
Okay, the winner will emerge from this round. A dozen or so camels were disqualified from a major camel beauty pageant in Saudi Arabia, not a minor camel beauty pageant, a major one, after judges discovered the animals had been injected with what? Peter Ducey.
HGH?
HGH, the human growth hormone.
I guess that doesn't make as much
human
sense.
growth hormone. Yeah. Camels with a human, whatever.
That would be a very serious advantage for a camel.
No, I think the point is they don't want them to look like people. They want them to look even more camel-like.
You know
but
a lot
what do
about
I know?
this.
We're going to roll the tape and see, is it HGH? The country has camel beauty pageants. But there is, we're sad to tell you, scandal in the world of camel beauty. A dozen animals have been disqualified from a major contest after judges found they had received Botox injections.
Botox.
Apparently, Botox can deceptively make a camel's head look bigger and its lips droopier.
Didn't you just say that you didn't know anything about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really nice to see who watches our show. Peter Ducey, brave effort, but Carly Shimkus remains
you lose
in
a
her
point?
throne. Yes. So now, look at that, 2-1, game over. Carly, you win another coveted mouth-breathing mug.
This one means even more than
And of course, the adulations of our many fans. So congratulations, Peter Ducey. That was a valiant attempt.
Thank you. I'm going to just not tell anybody that I did the quiz tonight so that they don't watch it.
We can share the mug.
Thank you.
We're
Mail
not
it back and
passive in
forth.
defeat. Okay, pay attention to the news each and every week, especially the weird parts, so you can tune in every Thursday to compete against our contestants. There's much more in this show. Stay tuned. I want to bring you up to date on a Fox News alert. The New York Times is reporting tonight that President Trump ordered special counsel Robert Mueller fired last June, but then backed off, and the White House counsel threatened to quit over the order. Some in the White House are saying it's not true. Mueller, of course, is leading the effort to investigate alleged Russian collusion in the election. A quick programming note, as the debate over immigration has risen to the top of the news in recent weeks, a number of figures on the left have denounced this show as racist. It's notable that not a single one of them has offered any evidence to support that slur or even bothered to rebut the arguments that we make every night. They just make loud noises about white supremacy and assume that's an argument. Of course, the rest of the media dutifully repeat that. The latest person to attack our show as immoral is former Weekly Standard editor Bill Kristol. Now, there are an awful lot of ways we could respond to Kristol, a former intellectual who now exists primarily on Twitter, and we considered them. But why? Kristol discredited himself years ago. That's why he no longer has a full-time job. So instead, we thought it might be more edifying to restate what we actually believe about immigration, and you can decide for yourself what you think of it. The point of our immigration policy, the point of all of our policies, is to help Americans. Watching out for our citizens is the only reason we have a government in the first place. If people in other countries enjoy and benefit from what we do, that's great. That's an added bonus, and we welcome that always. But it can never be the main point of what we do. Americans are the main point. That's always true, no matter what the issue is. When the concerns of foreigners take precedence over the needs of Americans, our government is betraying us and has become illegitimate. Of course, that's exactly what's been happening. Voters understand this, and they hate it. That's why they elected Trump. To permanent Washington, election results from last year were a hard slap in the face, a rebuke they could not accept and refused to learn from. So instead, they decided their own country was irredeemable and its population should be ignored. That's how we wound up with an immigration policy that most Americans do not support, because the people making the policy don't care if you support it or not. Immigration clearly has upsides, and we try to note that. Many immigrants are impressive people, really impressive people, and add greatly to this country. We know a lot of immigrants like that. We also know some who shouldn't be here. Not all immigrants are the same, just like not all college applicants are the same. Some are worth admitting, others are not. Americans get to decide who makes the cut. It's our country, it's our call. That's the main point we're making. Maybe you sincerely believe that importing millions of poor people from around the world will make America richer and more stable, and maybe you're right. But before you do that, before you import them, you should explain exactly how that's going to work. You're not allowed to change America profoundly and forever without showing the rest of us how it's going to make our lives better. That's an honest question, and you can't avoid it forever simply by shrieking racist. That's it for us tonight. We head from Washington to New York City, the beating heart, where Sean Hannity